And just when you think endurance, strategy, and adaptability are enough, when you've learned to survive the cycles, decode the patterns, and maintain your momentum, there comes a deeper, almost unsettling shift in perspective, one that very few creators ever fully grasp. And that is this. The real game was never about the algorithm, never about the audience, but about your own perception of control. Because in 2026, the biggest limitation isn't reach. It's how narrowly most creators think. Because up until now, everything you've done has been reactive in some way, responding to trends, adjusting to performance, optimizing based on results. But the creators who break into the highest level of growth stop reacting and start predicting. Not in a mystical way, but through a deep understanding of patterns, behavior, and timing that allows them to move before the system even fully shifts. They begin to notice signals others ignore, the subtle change in content styles that are gaining traction, the slight variation in hooks that are performing better, the emerging patterns in viewer behavior that hint at what's about to work next. And instead of waiting for those trends to become obvious, they act early, positioning themselves ahead of the curve. And this early positioning is what creates that illusion of overnight success, when in reality, it's the result of calculated timing, of stepping into a space just before it becomes crowded, just before competition spikes, just before the algorithm becomes saturated with similar content. Because once a trend becomes obvious, it's already too late to dominate it. You can still benefit, but you won't lead. And this is where awareness becomes your greatest asset. The ability to step back from your own content, from your own results, and observe the platform as a whole, almost like an outsider, identifying shifts not just in what is popular, but in why it's becoming popular. And that why is everything, because trends are just surface-level expressions of deeper behavioral patterns, changes in what people find interesting, relatable, or emotionally engaging at a given moment in time. So instead of copying trends, advanced creators extract the underlying principles, the emotional triggers, the structural elements that make those trends work, and then apply them in new, original ways that feel fresh, not repetitive. And this is what allows them to stay ahead, to continuously create content that feels relevant, timely, and engaging, even as the platform evolves. But here's where it becomes even more powerful. The moment you start predicting instead of reacting, you gain something most creators never experience: creative control without dependence. The ability to generate performance without needing to chase what's already working. And that changes everything, because now you're not limited by what exists. You're contributing to what comes next. Meanwhile, the algorithm begins to respond differently to your content because it detects novelty combined with performance, a rare combination that signals high potential for wider distribution, placing your videos in stronger testing pools, giving them more opportunities to scale. And this creates a new level of growth, one that feels less competitive and more expansive, because instead of fighting for attention in crowded spaces, you're operating in areas with less resistance, where your content stands out more naturally. But reaching this level requires one critical shift: letting go of the need for immediate validation, because when you're ahead of the curve, results may not always be instant, and if you rely too heavily on short-term performance, you might abandon strategies that are actually positioning you for long-term success. This is where patience becomes strategic, not passive, a deliberate decision to stay aligned with your understanding, even when the results haven't fully caught up yet. And over time, that patience pays off, as your content begins to connect more deeply, spread more widely, and perform more consistently. Not because you followed what worked, but because you understood what would work. And at this point, something shifts internally. You stop feeling like a participant in the system and start feeling like a contributor to it. Someone who influences the direction of content rather than just adapting to it. And that realization is powerful because it removes the uncertainty that holds most creators back, replacing it with a sense of clarity, confidence, and control. Because now, you're not guessing anymore. You're observing, interpreting, and acting with intention. And in a platform where millions of creators are competing for attention, that level of awareness becomes your greatest advantage. Because in 2026, the ones who grow the fastest aren't the ones who follow the system most closely. They're the ones who understand it deeply enough to move ahead of it. And once you reach that point, once you begin to see the patterns before they fully form, once you learn to act before the crowd reacts, you realize something that changes everything. You're no longer trying to catch up. You've started to lead.